The story begins with a young assassin named Sulo infiltrating a villa, attempting to steal the dragon's ring. She comes close to the ring, calling the security pathetic, but when she grabs the ring, an emergency alert is sent to the guards, who immediately begin pursuing her. Her partner rushes to her aid and knocks the guards out. They quickly depart the estate and board a ship to discuss their plans. She informs Yoon, her lover, that she wishes for the two of them to quit their organization. However, he gets apprehensive and tells her that the only way for someone to leave the organization is through death. He stabs her, but finds out that she switched out the dragon's ring with another that she had prepared for their wedding. She takes the dragon's ring and leaps into the ocean. But the dragon's ring is activated elsewhere. We see a man as he fights demonic boars with his lightning attacks. He senses a disturbance in the time-space and heads towards the Low Mansion. A young girl is being tortured by a group of people and Sue is reincarnated into the girl's body. She is confused at first but gains the memories of the body. She starts fighting back and quickly gets the upper hand against her opponents. The man arrives and helps knock out her attackers. When he approaches her, she ends up attacking him as well. He gets back up and grabs her, heading straight for the testing palace, where everyone born must pass the spiritual exam. He tells her that she was tested when she was 5 years old but had 0 spiritual energy. The spirit energy is divided up by the 5 elements and has 7 different levels. She has no affinity with wind, water, or lightning, but her spiritual grade for wood and fire is the highest level. The famous dragon's ring is also discovered in her body as she completes the test. It's a legendary item from when the time-space goddess and the great emperor Ninian fought together against the spiritual beings. And when the emperor died, the goddess sealed his soul into the dragon's ring. Crow-shaped monsters begin to appear as soon as they sense her. The man quickly sends Sue off on his horse while dealing with the monsters. Back at the mansion, Sue's servant girl Lulu is overjoyed that she's okay. Sue finds out that she is actually the crown princess. Sue drinks some tea, but it's disgusting because ever since her spiritual energy was measured to be 0, she has been treated like garbage, especially by her sister, Shuxi, who wants to take her position as the crown princess. To Sue's amazement, the little girl discloses the young man's identity to be Prince Jin Wang. He is the world's #1 cultivator of the lightning element. Meanwhile, in the crown princess palace, he enjoys the company of some beautiful women, but suddenly, one of the girls speaks in a man's voice. The woman transforms into a mysterious figure, and the two plot against Jin Wang. He reports about Jin's visit to the testing palace and notes he was accompanied by Sue. The crown prince visits the Low Mansion and Sue is brought before the prince. Shuxi appears and accuses Sue of being jealous of her looks and attempting to poison her. Shuxi has also organized the barracks commander to show a fake bounty that he claims was issued by SUAS. They argue. The prince is attacked by an unknown individual, who is eventually revealed to be Mr. Beijing Ling, master of the Bakun Palace and chairman of the barracks. He reveals that the barracks commander took a bribe. Ling is well acquainted with the crown prince, and Sue wonders if the prince is gay. Sue's father reprimands her for her behavior in front of the prince, and she is detained. Sue awakens in the dungeon to discover Lulu sobbing at the cell door. Lulu tries to pick the lock, but Shuxi appears. She and her servants begin beating up little Lulu. Shuxi tries to whip Sue, but Sue grabs hold of it, pulling her in and threatening her. Their father appears and attacks her, seeing her as nothing more than trash. The prison shakes, and Prince Jin Wang arrives, smashing the roof open. Seeing Sue in such a state, he becomes angered. Sue's father suddenly switches sides and begins criticizing Shuxi for plotting against Sue. He tries to suck up to Sue, but she calls him shameless, and she decides to cut her ties to the family. Sue is brought to Prince Jin Wang's palace. Jin tries to sense the dragon's ring in her body. He explains that the dragon's ring has the power of time-space, but it's suppressing the power of her fire and wood elements. Thinking about how Lulu was beaten, Sue asks the prince to help her unseal her powers. He tries giving her a bunch of different elixirs to help unlock her powers, but no matter how many she eats, it has no effect. When that doesn't work, he goes to look up the manuscripts, and he notices one in the language of the ancient gods. But as he reads the scroll, something dark emerges from the scroll and strikes him. He wakes up and finds his hand being consumed, but shocks himself with his lightning to keep it contained. Sue goes to find the prince but finds him unconscious on the floor. She tries to help him, but the prince's eyes turn red, and he suddenly snatches her by the neck. Using some glass, Su cuts the prince and manages to get free, and he soon passes out. A celestial entity in the guise of a lovely lady arrives and looks after his health. Later, Lulu tells her that the heavenly figure is the Yaoqi Palace's master, Liao. Prince Jin Wang appears in front of her and apologizes for hurting her. Su asks if he found a way to unlock her powers, and he tells her that they need the water of spiritual sky, but it is only found in the Crown Prince's palace, so their only option is to steal it, which Su is confident at doing. Later that night, they sneak into the Crown Prince's palace and the treasure room. They fall into an illusion, which takes them to a hidden armory where weapons of every caliber are stored. Jin Wang assesses the situation and notes that their goal is to make it to the next door, but it's guarded by thunder clouds, so he uses his own lightning to draw the clouds' attacks away. Su dashes toward the door but gets a strange feeling in her head as a strange blade calls out to her. She becomes distracted and rushes for the blade. The clouds return and strike lightning on her, but Su is able to use the blade as it recognizes her as its master. The two get through the door and make it to the water of spiritual sky. The ground shakes, and Su is subsequently dragged up into a massive sphere of water. Jean jumps in to save her. Su begins to drown, and Jean kisses her to give her air. The Crown Prince goes to catch them, but when he arrives, the water prison is broken, and the two have vanished. The Crown Prince suspects that they were able to escape because of the time-space power. The two were transported back to Jin Wang's palace, and they even returned with the alchemy pass. Liao appears, bringing important news about a rare beast hunt occurring in the Sunset Melvins in the mountains. Liao is excited for their hunt, but Jean disappoints her, telling her to go on ahead while he takes Su somewhere safe. He sets her down and gives her a pendant in case she gets into trouble. He heads back to Liao. A dragon appears, breathing fire at them, so they combine their energies to fight against it. Meanwhile, Su discovers a mysterious egg and becomes overjoyed. But the Crown Prince appears behind her. He wants her back now that he knows she has the power of time-space. He warns her about Jin Wang, saying he suffers from a dark energy that will one day consume him, but he used the power of space to suppress it, which he absorbed from his mother, and will do the same to her. The Crown Prince hears the roar of a dragon, and a blast of energy is fired at their location. Su falls, and when she wakes up, she looks for the egg and finds it hatching. It hatches into a dragon, and it bonds with her, and suddenly her time-space powers activate. She falls asleep, and when she wakes up, she finds herself in a completely different place. The dragon can speak and tells her this is a space she created. The dragon explains to Su that only her soul can enter the space, so her body is still on the outside. The Crown Prince's aide approaches Su's body, seeing she has unlocked her wood and fire elements, but quickly leaves when he hears another voice. Su awakens to find a girl saying that Jin Wang sent her to look for her. However, when Su looks the other way, she pulls out a dagger. While she is attempting to kill Su, her dragon appears and eats the assassin's blade and even bites off the woman's hand. Su gets behind the girl and finishes her off. She recognizes the girl as being one of Liao's maids. The Crown Prince wakes up and finds the pendant that Jean had given to Su. Jean appears and confronts him about Su's whereabouts. Liao begs Jean to rest. Suddenly, Su appears, and Jean is overjoyed that she is okay. Jean tries to approach her, but she pushes him away. He asks who harmed her, and Su points out Liao's maid. Jean says that they were with him the whole time and asks Su to believe him, but she thinks he is only interested in her power of time-space. She takes out her dagger to ward him off, but this causes Liao to defend him. Jean steps in the way and takes the attack to protect Su. We see them back at the palace, and Jin's dark energy is going out of control. He has kept it restrained as Ling and some of the elders try to treat him. Suddenly, a ray of light appears, and Liao materializes in the room, able to calm Jean down. She has not been able to find a cure for Jean but suggests they need to find Grandmaster Ong, the best potion maker in the land. Su insists on accompanying Liao to find the Grandmaster, saying she can help out, but Liao laughs at her. Despite their differences, they come to an agreement and head off to the Crown Prince's palace. We learn that he had actually let Jean and Su go. He wants to kill Jean, but the only way to do that is to let his darkness consume him. He would need to kill Su, who is the key to curing his darkness. but the crown prince also wanted her time-space powers for himself. His partner calls him too greedy, and the two go their separate ways. Su and Liao travel on a flying horse to the Inlu mountain, but they find that it's protected by a barrier that disables their powers, so they are forced to climb up, which Liao struggles with. Su takes the lead and eventually is able to make it to the top. They meet the Grand Master Hong Yun, and Liao asks for his help. He says he has no interest in their gifts but tells them if they fight, he will help the winner. Liao creates countless arrows, firing them at Su. Su dodges the arrows, but when some are about to hit her, she manages to block. He suffers from a dark energy that will one day consume him, but he used the power of space to suppress it, which he absorbed from his mother and will do the same to her. The crown prince hears the roar of a dragon, and a blast of energy is fired at their location. Su falls, and when she wakes up, she looks for the egg and finds it hatching. It hatches into a dragon and bonds with her, and suddenly her time-space power activates. She falls asleep, and when she wakes up, she finds herself in a completely different place. The dragon can speak and tells her this is a space she created. The dragon explains to Su that only her soul can enter the space, so her body is still on the outside. The crown prince's aide approaches Su's body, seeing she has unlocked her wood and fire elements, but quickly leaves when he hears another voice. Su awakens to find a girl saying that Jin Wang sent her to look for her. However, when Su looks the other way, she pulls out a dagger. While she is attempting to kill Su, her dragon appears and eats the assassin's blade and even bites off the woman's hand. Su gets behind the girl and finishes her off. She recognizes the girl as being one of Liao's maids. The crown prince wakes up and finds the pendant that Jin had given to Su. Jin appears and confronts him about Su's whereabouts. Liao begs Jin to rest. Suddenly, Su appears, and Jin is overjoyed that she is okay. Jin tries to approach her, but she pushes him away. He asks who harmed her, and Su points out Liao's maid. Jin says that they were with him the whole time and asks Su to believe him, but she thinks he is only interested in her power of time-space. She takes out her dagger to ward him off, but this causes Liao to defend him. Jin steps in the way and takes the attack to protect Su. We see them back at the palace, and Jin's dark energy is going out of control. He has kept it restrained as Ling and some of the elders try to treat him. Suddenly, a ray of light appears, and Liao materializes in the room, able to calm Jin down. She has not been able to find a cure for Jin but suggests they need to find Grandmaster Ong, the best potion maker in the land. Su insists on accompanying Liao to find the Grandmaster, saying she can help out, but Liao laughs at her. Despite their differences, they come to an agreement and head off. At the Crown Prince's palace, we learn that he had actually let Jin and Su go. He wants to kill Jin, but the only way to do that is to let his darkness consume him. He would need to kill Su, who is the key to curing his darkness, but the Crown Prince also wanted her time-space powers for himself. His partner calls him too greedy, and the two go their separate ways. Su and Liao travel on a flying horse to the Inlu mountain, but they find that it's protected by a barrier that disables their powers, so they are forced to climb up, which Liao struggles with. Su takes the lead and eventually is able to make it to the top. They meet the Grand Master Hong Yun, and Liao asks for his help. He says he has no interest in their gifts but tells them if they fight, he will help the winner. Liao creates countless arrows, firing them at Su. Su dodges the arrows, but when some are about to hit her, she manages to block with a barrier of wood. Liao loses sight of Su, and she reappears behind her with her sword to her neck, and Su is declared to be the winner. But the Grandmaster was also impressed by Liao's abilities. He invites her to participate in his event where he will choose a disciple next month. Liao leaves Jin's care to Su and leaves to prepare for the event. The two then get ready to return to treat Jin, and the Grand Master uses a strange technique that teleports them across the country. Su is shocked at how they arrived back at the palace, and the Master reveals he used space magic. He tells the others that in order to treat Jin, he requires a large amount of high-quality crystals to make an elixir. Liao is shocked at the number of crystals needed, and they immediately gather all the crystals that they have, but find that they don't have enough. Ling explains to Su that crystals have different grades based on their color and that they are found when cutting open stones. So it's all up to luck to get the high-quality crystals. Su's dragon, Meng, appears, salivating at the thought of eating the crystals. It turns out Meng is able to sense the grade of the crystal without even cutting it open. Su gets an idea and heads to the market. Meng transforms into a dog. They go to the stone-guessing market, and Meng picks out all the valuable stones. As Su goes to pay, two strangers suddenly appear in the market and announce that they are buying up all the stones for their grandfather's birthday. They are identified as Alan and Dee, the young masters of the Loya house. Su tries to ignore them, walking away, but the two try to grab her bag. They end up spilling all the stones on the floor and mixing them all up. They are unable to tell who owns which stones, so Su proposes a wager. They each pick 3 stones, and whoever chooses the best gets to keep everything. The siblings pick first, but when Alan grabs a good stone, Meng quickly pees on it to stop him from picking it. When they open up the stones, the siblings have 2 crystals while Su has 3, so she gets to take all the stones. Su's sister, Shuxi, appears and tries to convince the siblings to join her in dealing with Su, but they are not interested. Shuxi is then approached by the Crown Prince's ex-partner, who claims he wants to be her ally in dealing with Su. Back at the palace, Liao is shocked at the number of crystals Su was able to obtain. Su and Ling are waiting outside, and Hong Yin is treating Jean. Jean is revealed in a much better state. Su tells him once again that she has repaid her debt to him and tries to leave, but he tells her to stay by his side. But Su is hesitant because when his dark energy goes out of control, he will try to devour her power again. However, the Grandmaster tells her that if she becomes strong enough, Jean will not be able to devour her power, but instead, she will be able to cure him. The Grandmaster tells her that if she can learn how to make an elixir in time, he will let her participate in his disciple selection event. A few days later, Su and Jean travel together through the ocean, and they soon arrive at an island that rises out of the sea. It contains countless secret cultivation books that are highly sought after. More ships arrive, and they are soon joined by other people, including Ling, the siblings, and Liao. Once they enter, there are countless doors revealed, but only one leads to the treasure. They all pick different doors to try, and Meng pops out of Su's clothes and jumps on Liao. Liao gets annoyed and leaves to choose a different door, but Meng opens the door, sensing treasure. An enormous fish skeleton emerges from the ground and soon turns into an entrance, and it appears to be the treasure room. After Su finishes choosing her books, they are all transported back to the hallway. Liao is devastated that Su has found the treasure room from her original door, and her brother, Tian, swears to help her get even. There is an earthquake and everyone gets split up. Su is transported outside and is suddenly attacked by ice. Liao's brother, Tian, intends to kill her and take the books back for his sister. Su's foot gets stuck, and she gets trapped in an ice coffin. There is an explosion, and the ice coffin goes flying into the ocean. When Su wakes up, she finds herself on land, although she is still trapped in ice. Jean finds her and tells her to date him for 3 months, and Su reluctantly agrees. Jean uses his lightning to melt the ice. He manages to free Su but ends up falling unconscious. Su can tell that he was already wounded but still tried so hard. Su gathers some herbs but is soon confronted by Tian. Su runs away from him as he continuously attacks. Su is eventually caught, and her hands are tied up as they go to find Jean. On their way, she tells him that she needs to pee. She hides behind a rock and quickly summons Meng, who is easily able to bite through the rope. After a while, Tian notices that Su has escaped. Tian creates a massive blizzard to flush her out, and as she tries to avoid his attacks, she falls down a cliff, landing in a strange crimson area. Tian follows after her but finds that his ice magic doesn't work in the scarlet area. There's a cave and Su heads deeper into the area. A stone tablet appears, saying that the fire cave can only be sealed if you sacrifice half of your cultivation. Tian doesn't care about the penalty and seals the cave. Soon, Jean arrives, having recovered from his injury. Jean is furious and knocks him out. Inside the cave, Su passes out from the heat, and Meng tries to help her. He takes out her alchemy pot and puts her inside. Su dreams about helping Jean, and Su starts gathering herbs unconsciously. Jean sacrifices his cultivation and reopens the cave. He finds Su unconscious on the floor. She wakes up and is glad to see him. When she opens her hand, she finds 3 pills. Jean tells her that they are pills to help restore one's cultivation. She had unconsciously made them while wanting to help Jean recover. Jean takes one of the pills and is able to restore the cultivation that he sacrificed to open the cave. Su becomes happy that with these pills, she is qualified for the Grandmaster's event. The day of the event arrives, and the Liao siblings plan to expose Su. The Crown Prince acts as the host of the event, and he announces the rules. Every family is allowed to send one person to submit an elixir they have created. If the elixir is of high enough quality, the pot will glow, and they will be allowed to participate in the event. Liao casually passes through with his elixir, and Shuxi passes as well. When it's Su's turn, Liao erupts. They both throw their elixirs in, and the crowd is impressed by Liao's blue glow. However, Su's elixir is rated with a purple glow, the highest possible level. But before Su qualifies, Liao points out that Shuxi is already in the competition, and it's against the rules to have 2 members of a family participating. Suddenly, the siblings' plan to expose Su is put into action, and Dee exposes that Su is actually adopted and has no right to participate for her family. This plan backfires and Jean jumps on stage, claiming Su is not breaking any rules. The next round begins, and each participant is given 15 minutes and a chest with random ingredients to create an elixir. The top 4 will advance to the next round. The Grandmaster judges the level and quality of each elixir. Su is in 5th place and misses out on the next round. However, Liao withdraws, and Su takes his spot. The next event is a death match with no rules. Su is up against Shuxi, and Shuxi quickly gains the upper hand as she hurls her aura towards Su. Jean is confused how Shuxi was able to suddenly get so strong. Shuxi charges up her power while Su combines her wood and fire elements to create a whip. However, it's not enough to break through Shuxi's attack. Shuxi begins to celebrate, but Su takes out her elixir and eats it gives her a surge in power, and Su activates her space magic, destroying Shuxi's magic and purging her dark power. As Jean watches, he spots the shady figure that was helping Shuxi and pulls him in. He is revealed to be a member of the Assassin's clan that has been chasing Jean since he was a boy. As Jean goes to unmask him, the man uses a technique and manages to get away. The final event begins, and they are transported into an underground maze. Liao recognizes where she is. They are in the underground passages beneath her family's palace. They are sent to find a fire stone. Meng ends up getting the fire stone, which he found hidden in the wall. Liao finds them and is able to activate the traps in the maze, dropping boulders onto Su. Using her scarf, Liao steals the fire stone from Su and drops another boulder on them. Su is confused why she is able to activate the traps, but Liao tells her that the Grandmaster must be helping her to win. Liao returns from the maze and hands over the fire stone to the Grandmaster. They are interrupted by a woman. She is revealed to be the Mist Fairy from the demonic clan. She explains that 15 years ago, the Grandmaster crippled her eldest disciple and vowed to provide her with a replacement. Liao gets taken, and with her gone, Su is chosen to be the Grandmaster's disciple. The Grandmaster and Su arrive at Yunlo's peak. He tells her about the place, but Su is not allowed to enter his house. He gives her a book about herbs and tells her she needs to memorize it elsewhere. Liao is ready to submit and calls Yen her master. Yen casts a spell on Liao's face. She says it's a magic that will reveal her true appearance, but Liao is confused. After a month, Su has finally memorized the book. The Grandmaster tests her and pushes her off the cliff. Su focuses and manages to open a portal. The Grandmaster congratulates her, and Su realizes he is teaching her both potion making and space magic at the same time. Su goes to find the Grandmaster but remembers she is forbidden from entering. However, she sees a painting of a woman that moves, and Su is too curious. She sees that the woman wields the same weapon as her. Suddenly, the Grandmaster appears, startling Su when she accidentally cuts the painting. Su feels terrible and thinks of a way to make it up to her master. She looks in her book to find out what the painting was made of and finds that it is composed of the leaves from the acacia tree. which can only be found in the forbidden dark forest. Sue arrives at the dark forest. As she explores, a girl comes running out as a golem chases after her. Sue fights with the golem, attacking with her fire, but it has little effect. Sue opens a portal to retreat, and the girl jumps in with her. The girl thanks Sue for saving her and introduces herself as May. They soon get attacked by tree roots, but Sue gets grabbed by a root from behind and gets dragged away. The roots take Sue to the acacia tree, and she begs to have some of its leaves, but the tree forces her to eat its fruit. Sue realizes that the acacia tree has grown in her inner space. The woman from the Grandmaster's painting appears, and then we learn that Hong-in was her disciple. They both vanish, and a tiny baby appears. Sue recognizes that these are the memories of the tree, and it begins speaking with her. The tree wants Sue to be her master so it can travel with her using her space. Meanwhile, Mei and Meng find Sue, but she is unconscious because she's in her inner space. They get attacked by Liao and her master. Sue gets captured, and Mei is defeated, but she manages to send off one of her cranes to get help. When Sue wakes up, she finds herself imprisoned by Liao and her master. Liao uses the face-revealing potion on Sue, and Yen goes to prepare for the Grandmaster's arrival. A mask forms on Sue's face, and Liao enjoys her suffering. But Sue taunts her, saying she is hiding her face because she has become ugly. Meanwhile, Jean receives Mei's letter informing him of Sue's condition, and he instantly rushes to find her. Sue quietly opens her space, and tree roots begin to spread. The roots burst out and capture Liao, but Liao tells her she will not be able to escape from her master's barrier. Sue tells Liao if she can help her escape, she will give her the fruit of the acacia tree, which can heal all wounds and ailments. Liao helps her escape, and Sue gives her the fruit. Yen appears behind them. Yen's magic is too strong, and she overpowers Liao. Sue works out the secret behind the barrier. She creates a magic bell that rings and destroys the barrier, and they all fall down the cliff into the sea. Meanwhile, Jean and Ling arrive in the dark forest. We learn that Mei actually has the same master as Jean. They're not sure where Sue was taken, so they decide to split up. Jean arrives at the Twilight Mist and finds the Grandmaster is also looking for Sue. The Grandmaster tells Jean to find Sue but warns him that she might not be the same. Sue floats on some wood, and a ship passes by. She gets saved, and when she wakes up, a man enters the room. She is shocked, recognizing him as Yoon, her lover who betrayed her. He tells her not to be afraid, but Sue backs away from him and falls. She looks in the mirror and sees that her face has changed. Yoon explains that he is the same person from her past, but this is actually her original world. Sue is left wondering who she really is. We see Mei as she searches for Sue. Ling teases her for wearing a cooking pan on her head, but Mei says that it was because of her that Sue went missing and that she won't take it off until they find her. Jean appears and tells them to be serious. He says he has sent out over 100,000 men to look for Sue across the kingdom. Ling says he has also recruited 30,000 mercenaries to help them search across the land. They split up to continue their search, and Jean swears to find Sue at all costs. Meanwhile, a group of assassins flee as Grandmaster Hong-in pursues them. They know they are no match for him and ask for a swift death because the assassin clan forbids them from revealing their secrets. However, the Grandmaster reveals a white token, and the assassins recognize him as the White Lord. With this, they reveal Sue's location, telling him she is with Hyun, the prince of the Xijing nation. Back on the ship, Sue meets with Hyun, and he has prepared some hot pot like they would have in the other world. Sue has a flashback to when she and a group of other abandoned kids were adopted to be assassins. Sue is feeling down, but Hyun cheers her up with some hot pot, and they make a promise to be with each other forever. Yoon tries to remind Sue of their promise, but Sue doesn't trust him because he betrayed her. Yoon explains she is originally from this world, and when he stabbed her, he avoided her vital points. It was his last resort to get the dragon's ring to activate so she could return to this world. Sue tells him the only reason she is with him is to learn about her identity. They are suddenly alerted, but it turns out to be just a servant. Sue heads outside, and Yoon follows after her. Sue sees a peculiar bird and some ships on the horizon. Yoon says the bird has good vision and is commonly used by spies, suspecting that someone is following them. He instructs his servant Jia to locate the closest port for them. After arriving at the harbor, they establish camp in the woods. Yoon tells her he was assigned to be her friend on Earth, and his father knows her true origins, including her parents. Yoon tries to distract her with the sunset, but Soo tells him that their time has passed, so he should stop trying to win her over. Later that night, Soo sneaks out but gets caught by Jia. Soo says she was just going to the bathroom, but Jia insists on accompanying her. But it seems they are being watched. Soo sends out the acacia tree and heads back with Jia. Meanwhile, the acacia tree grows and catches the spies that were following them. They turn out to be the men that Jean sent out to find Soo. The tree delivers a message from Soo to the Grand Master, saying she can fix his painting and apologizes for being unable to return. The men realize that they have found Soo, and they quickly send word to her friends. The next day, on their way to meet Yun's father, they are suddenly attacked by paper cranes. Ling and Mei appear before Soo, but they don't recognize her and quickly apologize and leave. Suddenly, lightning strikes, and Jean appears. He embraces her, glad to have finally found her. But Jean sees her face and becomes apprehensive, grabbing her with his lightning and questioning who she is. Things look bad for Soo, but Meng breaks things up, leaping into Soo's arms and returning to her inner space. When Jean notices this, he remembers the Grandmaster's warning that she might not be the same when he found her. Realizing she is Soo, he tells her how much he missed her. But Yoon comes and takes her other hand, and the two begin to fight over Soo. In the end, Soo breaks up the fight. Jean asks why she stayed with Yoon instead of coming back to him, and she tells him Yoon has answers about her true identity. Jean demands to join her, and Yoon has no choice but to allow them. They have a break for hot pot, and Yoon brings up stories from his past with Soo. Jean gets jealous, and they fight again, this time over giving Soo food. Meanwhile, in Hell City, Jin's master meets with his other disciple, Sean. They are plotting to help Jean claim the throne, but the master scolds Sean for failing his mission as he exits the room. He notices Liao walking into the master's room with a veil covering her face. Afterward, Sean confronts Liao, asking why she is wearing a veil. She explains her face was scarred, and he wants to help her get justice. But Liao says it doesn't matter, and Sean is surprised how mature she has become. Liao takes her leave, but as she does, the Grand Master passes by, and she wonders if he was also there to see her master. Meanwhile, we meet the Emperor as he chastises the Crown Prince. They have a disagreement over the Prince's wife as the Emperor doesn't give his blessing for their union as the Crown Prince leaves the palace. He knows he is being followed, as a paper talisman reveals itself. Soo and the group climb through a snowy mountain to get to the Shi-Jin capital. Jean appears to struggle with some kind of condition but hides it from the others. They are suddenly attacked by a pack of beasts, and they prove to be quite a challenge. Jean is able to fend them off but becomes affected by his condition. The group gets split up with him leading Soo away, but Soo turns back to help her friends. She covers herself in the holy water and attracts all the beasts towards her as they jump on her. She teleports away. She leads them off a cliff, grabbing onto the acacia tree, and the beasts fall into the water. There is one beast left, and Jean saves her just in time but ends up falling unconscious. Soo kisses him and brings him into her space, which helps to improve his condition. Soo swears she will cure him when she gets stronger. When they return from the inner space, Soo checks on Jia, but it ends up binding her with the acacia branches, saying she knows what she did. She had put a special spice into their meal, which attracts the normally peaceful snow beasts. She says she wanted to help Yoon by splitting Soo away from Jean. When Jean is ready to attack her, Yoon comes to her aid and defends her. Soo lets it go but warns him not to mess with her friends. As soon as everyone continues forward, Jia thanks Yoon for keeping her safe, but she is suspicious and casts a spell on him to make him weak. Later, as they arrive at the Shi-Jin palace, they find it to be dark inside. Jean detects 50 people in the shadows, but suddenly, there are fireworks, and the King Aliang appears. There is a whole production as he sings a song to welcome Soo and says it's been over a decade since he saw her. He tells her to call him uncle, as he is friends with her mother. Soo asks how he knows her mother, and the king goes into another song. When the king was young, he escaped the palace to explore the world but ended up broke and alone. That's when he met Soo's mother, who fed him and helped him get back to his country. When he became king, he swore to help her in any way. The last time he saw her, she brought Soo and told him she has too many enemies, so she asked him to use the dragon's ring to send Sue to Earth, where she would be safe. He then sent his own son as well, with the instruction to stab her when the time is right. Jean is confused why she had to be stabbed, and Yoon tells him that the dragon's ring reacts to anger, and getting stabbed by her lover could achieve this. Ling asks the king if he knows where Sue's mother is, but he says he has no idea. However, the king tells Sue her mother's final request was for him to help her find a blood ginseng, which, when eaten, will let Sue inherit her mother's legacy. But unfortunately, the king has had no luck finding it, and her friends have no idea. Hearing all this, Sue wants some time to think things over. Yoon tells her he has especially prepared her room. When Sue checks out the room, she finds it filled with things from her past. There is a lipstick that reminds her of when Yoon gave her one as a gift in the past. But now she throws it away, and Meng thinks it's food and has a bite but is quickly disappointed. Sue wants to check her herb book to look up the blood ginseng, but Meng reminds her that she threw it away. Sue has no choice but to write out the contents of the book, which she has memorized. Meanwhile, Jean tells Ling to find information on the blood ginseng, and he departs to contact his mercenaries. On the other hand, Mei gets drunk and continuously requests more drinks. The staff informs her they are all out, so she goes off to look for more on her OW, and as she stumbles around, she encounters the King Yoon and Jia, who look to be engaged in planning. The king tells her he will send more wine to her room, but as she leaves, Mei secretly sends a paper crane to find out what they are discussing. Sue successfully recalls the properties of the blood ginseng, which seems to provide massive benefits for space sorcerers. Suddenly, a figure enters the room through the window, and Sue finds that it was just Jean. He laughs at her messy appearance and gives her a change of clothes. Jean is dazzled by her new outfit and tells her to forget about Yoon. They are about to kiss, but Mei and Ling interrupt, saying they have news to report. But Jean gets mad and zaps them for ruining his moment with Sue. He punishes them, forcing Ling to hold Mei up without touching the ground. Ling goes on to report that the blood ginseng is one of the treasures being offered this year by the Mushin Mansion. He then tells them that in ancient times, a man called Mr. Mu found a mystical land where rare plants and treasures would grow. He established his house there, but would often get attacked by people looking for treasures, so in the end, he signed a peace pact to open up his house once a year and bring out 100 treasures for people to find and compete for. Mei goes on to report what she heard. Jia complains to the king about Yoon almost letting her get killed by Jean, and she threatens to cast her spell on him once more. The king says that they are both at fault and reminds them that they are working on a task that has the potential to change the world, warning them to do their jobs correctly or they will both be replaced. Suddenly, Yoon jumps into the room and gets immediately restrained by Jean and Sue. He has come to tell Sue the truth. He says that his father did actually know her mother but wasn't telling the whole truth. He warns them about Jia, saying she is not just a normal servant. He says that they should go after the blood ginseng, but Jean refuses to let him come along. However, Yoon reasons that if they don't take him and Jia, the king will be suspicious and send people to secretly follow them. Instead of being secretly followed, Sue agrees to bring them along despite Jin's protests. The next day, the king sees them off, and they head to Mushin Mansion. Ling wonders why they don't just fly there, but Yoon tells him they must save as much strength as possible so they can face the traps and obstacles at the mansion as they travel. A giant boulder comes falling down. Jean uses his lightning to destroy it, but it bursts and creates an odd fog. It's a strange poison, but the acacia tree saves Sue with its fruit. Sue gets caught and pulled away. She finally yells and wonders if she is working with Yoon and Jia, but Liao says she is there to ask for another acacia fruit. Most of her scars were healed, but there is still one that remains. Liao is willing to give anything for another fruit, but Sue remembers how she tried to kill her and turns her down. She gives the fruit to cure her friends, and they continue on their way. The group makes it to the entrance of the Mushin Mansion, but the entrance appears to be blocked. Ling tries to break through with force, but it doesn't work. Meng appears, sensing treasure, and drags Sue in. The others see that weapons are prohibited, and they quickly follow after Sue inside. Meng is also gone because his ability to find treasure is not allowed. It's complete chaos inside the mansion as people find and chase after treasures. The Liao siblings are among the people fighting for the treasures. Suddenly, a masked man appears, declaring he has obtained the blood ginseng, and quickly makes a run for it. Hearing this, Jean tells the group to chase the man. The group chases after him, and Sue uses her space magic to get ahead. She tries to catch him with the acacia tree, but he dodges and dashes across the water. Liao appears before the man, offering to catch him in exchange for an acacia fruit. Sue comes from behind, but the man slips away, and Sue ends up in an awkward situation with Liao. The man leads them to a crimson field and disappears. As the others investigate, they are also transported away. They find themselves transported to a mysterious forest. Jean and Sue notice something strange and realize that they are surrounded by demonite trees. The demon eyes surround them and attack, wanting to drain their spirit power. The group easily fights them off, but there seem to be just too many. Eventually, some of the eyes latch onto Sue and absorb her power. Sue becomes weakened, and a swarm of eyes attacks her. However, she gets saved by Liao, and she requests an acacia fruit for saving her. Sue wonders why her appearance is so important but ends up giving her the fruit, and Liao quickly leaves. The mysterious man appears again, and as the group tries to catch him, he sinks into the water. Everyone falls in after him, and they are transported once again. This time, they arrive at a misty bridge. They are unsure if they should cross, but Jia volunteers to go first. Sue sends the acacia tree after her just in case. As Jia crosses the bridge, a chain suddenly grabs her. Despite the acacia tree grabbing her, its branch gets broken. The group crosses the bridge and sees that Jia is fine. They find themselves at the inner part of the mansion, where all the best treasures are hidden and where the owner of the mansion lives. When they head inside, they find it filled with treasures. They get another glimpse of the man, but when they follow him, they just find a dead end. Meanwhile, the mysterious man reveals himself to be the crown prince, and he joins his wife, Yua, the owner of the mansion. She asks what he has been up to, and the crown prince says he was just watching the people fight over the treasures. But Yua reveals she has been watching him through her magic mirror and gets angry that he led a group of people through the secret teleportation points and led them to the inner area. The crown prince says he knows she gets lonely because people rarely make it to the inner area, so he brought some random people to entertain her. Hearing this, Yua thinks he is so thoughtful and apologizes for getting mad at him. But suddenly, they hear Jean and Yoon talking about Sue in the mirror, and Yua realizes that the crown prince is helping his ex-fiancée. Yua becomes outraged, thinking the crown prince must still love Sue, so she hits a red button. The room begins to shake, and the group gets transported, and they are each imprisoned in a barrier. Jean tries to use his lightning to break free, but it's no use. Sue tries to use her space magic to escape, but that also doesn't work. Yoon tells them that the barrier is made from a special jade that blocks most magic. Suddenly, a swarm of demon eyes appears in each space. They are more advanced than the ones they faced in the forest, with the ability to change forms and adapt. Jean fights a serpent, which he destroys, but it reforms into a man. Things are looking bad as everyone struggles against the demon eyes. Just as things are about to get ugly, the demon eyes disappear. A giant disco ball drops down, and Yua makes her entrance. She introduces herself to them as the 186th head of the Mu family. The crown prince is also revealed, since he brought them all here for her entertainment. She decides to have some fun. She decides to start with Sue and brings her to the front to make things fair. She restores Sue's strength. She challenges her to a fight. If Sue can defeat her before the incense burns out, she will let them all go and even give her the blood ginseng. But if Sue loses, all her friends will be killed. The incense is lit, and the fight begins. Sue starts off by attacking with her fire, but Yua dodges, and there is a flash of light. Yua can also use fire and throws it back at Sue. Sue uses her space magic and attacks Yua from behind. But there is another flash of light, and Yua can also use space magic. Yua teleports all around Sue, toying with her, and knocks her to the ground. Sue wonders how Yua is able to use space magic, and Yua reveals that her disco ball has the ability to copy all attacks for her to use. The incense is burning out, and the crown prince panics. He looks over to Jia, who he knows is a part of the assassin clan, but she is powerless. Yua notices the crown prince's odd movements and thinks he is being seduced by Sue. Yua becomes enraged and decides to kill Sue's friends. They are all stabbed, and Sue is devastated. Yua whips Sue, and she crawls over to Jean. They share a moment, But Yua breaks it up as she finishes Jean off and continues to whip Su. Su falls unconscious and enters her inner space. She is then told by the acacia tree that there is a way to win. Su is demoralized, but the tree tells her that Liao planted a seed from the fruit she gave her, so she has an extra branch outside that they can use as their secret weapon. The acacia tree erupts from the ground, and it has also found the blood ginseng. Yua is shocked that the ginseng was found. Outside, it seems like blood begins to rain down. Yua demands the ginseng back, attacking Su with her different treasures, but Su manages to block or avoid all the attacks. She approaches the blood ginseng, but Yua reveals Jean is still alive, taking him hostage. The crown prince tells her to choose the blood ginseng, and Jean tells her that he trusts her. Su chooses the blood ginseng, and Yua finishes Jean off. Su begins to create a concoction in her alchemy pot, while Yua tries to stop her. We learn that the blood ginseng will give a space sorcerer the power to go back in time. Su descends into her pot and emerges with her powers awakened. She goes back in time to a few moments earlier and stops Yua, stabbing her with the acacia tree. Yua's blood floats in the air, forming a sword, and enters into Su's mind. After that, Su sees the crown prince sneaking away and confronts him. The prince says he was working undercover to help her. He says he worked with King Aliang, Yun, and the assassin clan. They told him to seduce Yua and convince her to put up the blood ginseng as a prize. He swears he had no ill intentions, and Su suddenly disappears. Su is back in time, unable to control the power. She watches the events of the previous day but is unable to interact with anyone. She tries getting Jin's attention, but she gets pulled by an unknown force, but she manages to push through, summoning a blood drop that flies into her body. Su awakens in the body and is glad to see Jean is alive. She locks the door, predicting Ling and Mei's arrival. Jean is shocked at how Su knew they would be there. Su then tells Jean about the catastrophe at the Mushin mansion, where she witnessed all of her friends dying in front of her and was unable to prevent it. But Jean tells her that since they are all alive and healthy, she saved everyone, which relieves her. Su is about to warn him about King Aliang's connection to the assassin clan, but she suddenly freezes up. Yun shows up while Ling and Mei are bickering outside, and Jean suddenly comes in, holding Su that he asks Yun for help, and he is taken to a healing spring. The king also arrives and immediately notices the mark of the blood ginseng on Su's head. The king is delighted, seeing this, and acts distressed by Su's condition. The king says that he has brought his nation's best healers to help and asks Jean to leave soon. But Jean insists on staying by her side. The king's attendants appear suspicious, and they are surrounded by a darkness that tries to provoke Jin's dark power. Ling watches from a distance, and we learn that Jean predicted this. Jean is playing along while they find a way to escape. Ling keeps watch. Mei rushes to get help from Owl City. She rushes into town to pass on the message to the Hell City spies but finds them all dead. She runs into a woman she recognizes as the Third Elder, who tells her that their spy network within the nation has been destroyed. It's impossible to give a message out to Owl City, and the woman is revealed to be a traitor. Mei engages her in a fight. Meanwhile, back at the spring, Jean hears voices telling him to consume Su's power. His dark power begins to manifest, and he struggles to control himself. The king joins in and uses his magic to compel Jean to attack Su. But Su blocks the attack with her magic that activates as Yun and Jia watch. Jia calls Jean foolish, revealing she saw through his plan. She caught Ling hiding in the trees and was the one who took out the Hell City spies. She mocks Yun about falling in love with Su, although he was only meant to pretend. Jia can tell that he fell in love for real. Yun says he has no regrets, but Jia reveals that once Jean absorbs Su, they will reset the universe. Su will be gone, and only she will remain. The ritual continues as a circle appears, and the water begins to rise. But things are put to a stop as the Grandmaster appears. The king is shocked to see him, and the Grandmaster blows everyone away. The king's attendants all flee, and the Grandmaster reveals Ling and Mei, who thank him for saving their lives. The Grandmaster confronts the king, who tries to fight him but is no match. He even throws his son at him. But the Grandmaster gets a hold of him. He comments on how the king was able to so easily sacrifice his son. But the king reasons that if they achieve their goal, His son won't remember when they reset the universe and bring back Hongyun's master. But the Grandmaster says, despite wanting his master back, he knows it would be against her wishes. He continues to choke the king. But the king says that the Grandmaster is the White Lord of the Assassin clan and is forbidden from killing. Although he can't kill, the Grandmaster teleports to the north and leaves the king on the battlefield. The Grandmaster returns and admits his connection to the Assassin clan, but it's more complicated than they think. Both Ling and Mei decide to trust him after he just saved both their lives. He starts healing Jean, which confuses Ling as to why he isn't saving his disciple. But the Grandmaster explains that he can see that Su already obtained the blood ginseng and turned back time. Once it has its risks, and her condition is beyond his healing. Ling asks what the king wanted with them, and the Grandmaster explains that they wanted to combine Jin's dark blood and Su's blood space powers to create a dark space-time array, which would let them control the power to reverse time and change history. Jin wakes up and says he will do anything to save Su. The Grandmaster says that to save Su, they must go back to the Mushin mansion. The next day, Liao is waiting in the mountains, but the group comes flying right past her. At the Mushin mansion, the Crown Prince is luring people with the blood ginseng, but the group zooms right past him. He is left with the other treasure hunters and quickly makes a run for it. The group swiftly makes it through all the teleportation points and makes it to the inner area as they arrive. Mei knows this is Yua, who seems to have a different appearance. Yua is startled and drops her food, but Mei catches it. Yua is grateful, introducing herself as the head of the Mu family, and offers Mei a reward. Mei asks for the blood ginseng and Yua happily agrees. She brings out the blood ginseng, and the Grandmaster starts his procedure with Su. The Crown Prince also returns, but he seems to have brought a mob with him. They're all amazed to see the blood ginseng, wanting to take it for themselves. But Jean and the others fight them off. As they fight, the blood ginseng is fused with Su's body thanks to the Grandmaster spell, and Su awakens as her power overflows. Everyone watches in shock and amazement as Su levels up multiple times, thanks to the blood ginseng, instantly becoming a Grandmaster-level space sorcerer in her inner space. Meng and the acacia tree also develop, and Mei evolves into a new form. The treasure hunters all jump on Su but get blown away, and they make a run for it. Mei is amazed at Su's advancement, and Su quickly thanks the Grandmaster for saving her. The Grandmaster warns her about the dangers of messing with time. Yua arrives with the prince, and Su sees her new appearance. The Grandmaster tells her she also has the power to erase a person's existence, and she had done so when she killed Yua in the other timeline. Su says that she had no choice because Yua had killed her friends. But the Grandmaster says that no matter the reason, erasing someone is taboo and is the reason why she was punished. He warns her the next time he might not be able to save her. He then congratulates her on advancing to the Grandmaster level, a feat that would normally have taken 20 years. And he says that she is now ready to inherit her mother's legacy. He reveals that her mother is the woman from his painting and tells them that the world is made up of 3 realms: the human realm, the spirit realm, and the god realm. Su's mother was the goddess of space, Inwa, and she somehow ended up in the human realm. She explored the world and ended up taking 2 disciples, the Grandmaster and a man named Han. She then founded this assassin clan to set up an information network to help her find a reincarnated baby that was said to bring disaster to the world. She granted them all powers but, in exchange, forbade them from taking human lives. After 100 years, they still couldn't find the baby. Until one day, Inwa was given a message that changed her plan. She decided to instead use the power of space to create an entirely new world and rewrite the laws of God. To do this, she trained more space sorcerers. But the spirit realm noticed her plan and sent an army to stop her. This turned into a war, and most of the space sorcerers were killed, and the assassin clan was weakened. They were losing the war, but Inwa was also pregnant. She used her powers to give birth and divided her power up between the acacia tree and the Grandmaster, telling them to protect her daughter so she can carry out her legacy. After that, she fights against the army of the spirit realm, and the Grandmaster joins her, wanting to fight with her until the end. But he gets knocked away, and his master takes her chance to send him away. After that, she was captured and taken away to the god realm. The Grandmaster then goes to his master's child but finds Han holding her. He says that they will never have the power to ascend to the god realm to save their master, so instead, he plans to use her child, along with the blood ginseng and dark blood, to turn back time and bring their master back. Han runs away and the two fight over the child. The Grandmaster destroys his eye, and he drops the child. In the end, Han gets away, and he was left with the child. He used the dragon's ring to split her soul, sending most of it to Earth but leaving one piece in this world so she could return. The Grandmaster says that Han ended up taking control of the assassin clan and joined up with King Aoliang, who also wanted to bring back their master. He tells Jean that he was chosen as a child, and the assassin clan has been secretly feeding him dark energy. Sue wonders why her mother wanted to create a new world and who her father is, but the Grandmaster doesn't know, and he instructs her to go to a secret ground that may have the answers to her questions. Jean escorts the Grandmaster out and is suspicious of his intentions. He believes everything is going according to the Grandmaster's plan, and he intentionally let Sue fall into King Aoliang's trap so she would get the blood ginseng, and his plan to make Sue a Grandmaster-level sorcerer would be achieved 20 years sooner. He also wonders how Sue could possibly create a new world as a half-goddess when even her mother failed to do so. Jean tries to attack him, but he dodges. The Grandmaster says that everything has been within his predictions, and he risked Sue getting the blood ginseng because it would have been more dangerous to cultivate for 20 years with the assassin clan after her. As for his question about creating the new world, the Grandmaster says he has no need to know, and Jean is frustrated by his answer. Jean returns to his friends, battered, and he tells Sue to forget her inheritance, saying that the Grandmaster is using her. But Sue insists on finding out who she is and can't just give up on inheriting her mother's legacy. She hints in her heart that she is not willing to trust him and flies away. The others make their way to the secret grounds, and May tries to cheer Sue up about Jean leaving. They make it to a town and stop for food. But Sue can only think about Jean, and a shady figure watches them from outside. Sue and May get drunk, and they all end up falling into a well. But this was a trap to draw out their stalker. They surround her, and she reveals herself to be Liao. She once again asks for another acacia fruit because, in this timeline, she still has a scar. Sue remembers that it was because of her help she was able to defeat Yua at the Mushin mansion, so she tells Liao to join them and promises to give her another fruit. Later that night, Yoon is also watching them, and he gets approached by Jia. She tells him that they must continue with their plan. Yoon says that without Jean present, he will follow them into the secret grounds and find a chance to capture Sue. Jia tells him that Jean visited the assassin clan to arrange a deal with their leader. We see Jean storming in and meeting with Han. Jean wants to work with them to disrupt the Grandmaster's plans. Han admits that he plans to sacrifice both him and Sue to turn back time, and they will no longer exist in the new universe. But Jean is okay with it because he believes that the Grandmaster's plan results in a worse ending for Sue. Jean reveals the white token and demands to become the White Lord. When he fought with the Grandmaster, he managed to steal it from him. With this, Han agrees and joins his red token with Jin's. He activates a spell, and Jean takes the Grandmaster's place as the White Lord. The next day, the group looks for a clue to find the secret grounds. As they look around, the chest piece that the Grandmaster gave Sue flies into a fan and changes into a beast. It runs off, and the group chases after it. Leads them to a dead end that changes into a door. May fails to open the door, so they try combining their powers to push it open. As they push, a fan suddenly opens the door, and Liao's senior, Sean, appears and tells them to hurry in, as some talismans follow after them. May is overjoyed to see her senior, and she introduces him to Sue. Liao wonders what he is doing here, and he explains that he was sent by their master to assist them. As they walk around, the ground suddenly moves, and they are all thrown into a river. As they flow down the stream, they see that this space is filled with gigantic creatures. Yoon and Jia manage to sneak in, watching from a distance. The group ends up getting split up, with Liao ending up in a frozen area, Ling being sent to an underwater area, and Mei ends up in a place filled with magma. As she tries to find her way out, she gets attacked by a golem. Meanwhile, Sue is led by a giant floating hand, and she eventually comes to a gigantic knight, which comes to life and attacks her. She blocks its attack and shatters its sword. She apologizes for awakening it and tries to leave, but the knight continues to attack. However, she is saved by Sean, and Sue ends up stabbing the knight, and it is defeated. She celebrates with Sean, and he offers her an apple, which she happily eats. They head off to find the others but walk away from the floating hand's direction. Meanwhile, Yoon and Jia come to a fork in the road while trying to track Su. Yoon spots a carnivorous plant and tells Jia that Su must be in that direction. When they get close, Yoon pushes her into the plant. But Jia casts magic on Yoon, causing him to suffer. She tells him to free her, but he refuses, remembering his promise to Su. He cuts off his arm that was affected and leaves her to die. The carnivorous plant is about to consume Jia, but she is suddenly freed, and she is found by several assassins. She is brought to Jin and informs him of Yun's betrayal. Jin declares that traitors must be punished and sends the assassins to find him. Meanwhile, Mei appears badly injured after fighting with the golem. Ling comes to Su's rescue on a flying fish. He takes her to the woods and treats her wounds. But when she wakes up, she gets mad at him for his strange method. They are suddenly interrupted when Yen appears and falls in front of them. He warns them that Su is in danger and then passes out. Meanwhile, Su continues her journey with Sean. A lady beetle climbs onto Su, and Sean warns that it could be poisonous before shooing it away. As they walk, Su realizes that she has been poisoned. Sean assumes it must have been the bud, but Su believes it was the apple he gave her. Sean quickly carries her, and Su is too weak to resist. They end up in a cave where Sean encounters Liao. He tries to convince her that he is taking Su out of the space to see a doctor, but Liao sees through his lies. Sean finally admits that he was offered 10 city-states in the north in exchange for Su. He blames their master, saying that while Jin was given special treatment, he was sent away on a mission for years in the north. The two start fighting, and while they are distracted, Su manages to summon her dagger and stab Sean in the back. Liao then catches him by the neck. Sean is surprised that this is how it all ends for him, and Liao finishes him off. Liao then gives Su the antidote for the poison and Su awakens. She tries to offer Liao the acacia fruit as thanks but fails because Mang had eaten all the fruits in her inner space. However, Liao reveals that her scars had already healed from the first fruits Su gave her, but she used this as an excuse to follow her around. She then reveals that all her actions were on the instruction of her master to protect Su. Su becomes curious about her master and asks about his character. Meanwhile, Ian awakens and finds Mei and Lane tending to his wounds. They ask why Su is in danger, and he tells them that more assassins are after her, including Jen. Suddenly, a wolf emerges and bites Ian, dragging him away. He is brought before Jin and Jia. Ian is shocked that Jia is still alive and disappointed to see Jen working with the assassins. Jin hands him over to Jia for punishment and sends assassins to find Su. Back at their camp, Mei and Ling debate whether they should save Ian. They assume he was eaten by the wolf, but Mei insists on rescuing him because he mentioned Jen. Before they can decide, they are approached by a shadowy figure. That night, Su and Liao spend time together, and Liao seems to have finally moved on from Jen. The next morning, Jin suddenly appears, but Su stomps on him, still angry that he left. Jin apologizes and tells her that he has found a map to the secret grounds. Now that Jin is back, Liao decides to leave, but as she is departing, she senses something is wrong. She notices a marking on Jin's arm belonging to the assassin clan. Rushing back, she finds that Su and Jin are nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Jia punishes Ian by feeding him to carnivorous plants. She casts a spell on him and leaves as the plants begin devouring him. She meets up with the assassins, who inform her that Jen has found Su. However, instead of bringing her to their headquarters, he seems to be leading her to the Temple of Inheritance. Using her tracking spell, Jia sees them heading toward the temple. The Red Lord, Han, appears and admits that he never trusted Jin. They join forces and Han teleports them to the temple's location. Thanks to Han's superior space magic, they arrive before Jin and Su. Han explains that this is also a cemetery built by the gods to honor the casualties of their war. He vows to sacrifice Su to resurrect the goddess and restore the assassin clan's power. As Jin and Su arrive at the temple, Jin warns Su to think carefully before accepting her mother's request. Su asks if he knows something she doesn't, but Jin promises that he will support her no matter what she decides. They share a kiss, and Su steps into the temple. She enters through a portal, and Jean then opens a space, tricking Han into believing they are too late. Han breaks through the space and realizes he has been deceived. The entire location was a fake area created using the acacia tree's paper magic. Han wonders why Jean would betray them, knowing that he has lost the ability to kill and is now vulnerable to their punishment magic. A magic circle forms beneath Jean, subjecting him to their spell. However, the Grandmaster suddenly appears and declares that since Jean took his place as the White Lord, he is no longer part of the assassin clan and is free to eliminate the traitors. The Grandmaster blasts them with his magic. Han attempts to escape using space magic but is stopped and forced to the ground. He is stunned by the Grandmaster's strength, realizing that Su's mother had given him half her power. The Grandmaster tells Han that he has lost his way and eliminates him. The Grandmaster then tends to Jin's wounds while Jia manages to grab the red token. A flashback shows Jin's confrontation with the Grandmaster. The Grandmaster explains that if Jin's plan succeeds, Su will ascend, and he will no longer be able to be with her. Jean is torn between this and the Assassin clan's plan but ultimately chooses to work with the Grandmaster, as long as Su is allowed to decide for herself. The Grandmaster agrees and gives Jean his white token, making him the new master of the Assassin clan. However, Jean has no interest in leading and destroys the white token. Meanwhile, it is revealed that Een survived thanks to Mei and her master. Everyone reunites and waits for Su's return. Meanwhile, Su ascends to the top of the temple and discovers a statue of her mother, who suddenly appears before her. Her mother explains that she left behind this fragment of consciousness to guide her. She reveals that she has been watching over Su all her life and has seen her struggles. She also explains that the world is divided into 3 realms, but anyone can ascend to the God realm with enough effort. Su is overjoyed to learn that her father gave her mother the inscription. She asks about his whereabouts, but her mother reveals that he died protecting her during the war. She then explains that creating a new universe requires Su to sacrifice herself and become one with space itself, meaning she will never be able to be with Jean. Su is torn between duty and love. Her mother urges her to think of the greater good and gives her 3 days to decide. Su has always felt trapped by fate, but for the first time, she feels like she has control over her destiny. Jean joins her, and she wonders what the future holds. But that's where the series ends. Remember to like the video and share your favorite moments from the series in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.